You want me to try it?
Thank you so much.
Yeah, what she said today. Well, so you're going to end up with this child raised these kids. I know, that's what they're going to do. So we live in Christensen, so have her let me know. So we can have some way. Like we have a resource. Yeah, we have graduates.
I know, but we can't have a USB. This is the only connector I have that we need to borrow, which is live streaming of it. So then you would. That's what last resort is to.
Unplug that for a second.
We didn't think about it. It's a new issue.
You need a converter, right? It's yours, and you need a converter, or you need a converter. You need that converter.
But Blake has it.
So this, I think, is the short. If I could have your attention for just a moment. Just a moment. If the family can gather in the other room, just as far as what's going to happen from that point, we'll have family prayer in that room, and then we'll invite the family back in. And at that point, we'll set up the additional seating in the other room, raise those blinds so that we have another 50 or so chairs in there. So just leave space for the family here in the room for when they come back in, and then we'll get everyone else seated in the overflow. So we'll excuse the family into the other room now.
So, my kids too. So they're saying they can just the sound.
Yeah, unless we can
Yeah,
unplug that
hit
for
play at
5
the same
seconds,
time.
and we can just borrow that and then just upload it real quick. But
Unplug
yeah, it's live
that?
streaming.
Yeah, we don't.
No, it's already.
Yeah, it's live streaming.
that's
That's
fine.
okay. We'll just do the two. We'll just do the two phones.
Sorry.
No, that's not stress. It's not bad.
And the video will be on this. This is the video. Or is it
This is video, correct.
This just stands right down, so you put your phone like right there.
Perfect, yeah.
So when we get to that spot, I'll just invite you guys up.
Or I can just leave my phone with you guys so you can just have that show me. Oh, wait.
I'll mess
We got you.
Yeah. Okay. You want to see?
Prayer.
Yes.
Everybody have tank? Yeah.
Congregation, please rise. We'll be inviting the family in. If you're not family and you're able to move to our overflow seating in this other room, we'd invite you to do that as they go in, just to make sure they all get seated. We invite you to be seated while we set up some additional chairs.
All right. Frank gave me a thumbs up, so I think that means we're good to go. Thank you all for being here today. We very much appreciate you taking the time to come and join us to celebrate my brother, to remember him, to support our family, express your love. Very difficult week, and coming here together to see all of you, to see smiles and tears, as bittersweet as that is, it does make this much easier to see so many wonderful faces here today. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being here with us. If you that we'll go through today, am Blake. I know almost everyone here, but I know there are some folks that perhaps don't know me. So my name is Blake. I am Richard's older brother, and I have the very great privilege and honor of being your conductor through this meeting today. We'll try to keep this somewhat quick, but I think poignant, lots of great memories and a lot of things that we'd like to express and share about my brother and our love for him. We'll move through the agenda today. First, we'll have an obituary reading by Richard's friend Colby, and then I will speak to you for a few minutes. Then my father, Gordon, will speak. My sister, Amberly, will have a tribute video. We'll take a few minutes for the technical piece of that, and a musical, a song that Richard loved. And at that point, we'll open it up for others to share some quick thoughts or memories about Richard at that time. So I wanted to bring that up now in case you'd like to start thinking about something you'd like to share. Really aiming for just a minute or two. I'd love to hear your expressions of love for Richard as well. Following remarks and memories from the group, we'll close things up and have a closing prayer and then move on from there. So that's our agenda for today. So, Colby, we're going to hand this over to you for an obituary reading. Oh, I've been asked to remind you to please keep your phones on silent.
Thanks, man. Hello, everyone. Richard Dean Christensen, known to many as Dad, Daddy, Dickie, Richie, and Rick, was a big-hearted and fun-loving dad, husband, brother, uncle, son, and friend. Born on December 3rd, 1986, to Gordon and Terry Christensen, Richard was ready to live life to the fullest. He was unexpectedly taken from us too soon on March 8th, 2025, at 38 years of age. Richard was born in Redlands, California. He was an active kid who always had a big smile on his face. He loved to dress up, play sports, and be outdoors. He lived in many cities and states throughout his childhood and lifetime, but ultimately settled in Utah County. Spanish Fork became his home. He loved his high school years in Southern Maryland, the brief time in New Jersey, and Hurricane, Utah. He made friends everywhere he went, and because he lived in so many places, he has friends all over the country. Richard was no stranger to the struggles of this life. He hit lows and held on tight, finding the highs again. He met so many people on his journey who loved and helped him through, and he did the same for anyone he could. He often went out of his way to help a sibling or his mom, do concrete work for family members, or have a heart-to-heart on a phone call. He met Melanie, and his life was never the same. He loved her like he'd Her personality complemented his, and we got to see Richard happy for the first time in many years. They married on July 31st, 2015 in Orem, Utah. The day he became a dad was the day his life truly began. He was an incredible father. Of all the things he loved, and he loved many things, his boys were at the very top of that list. Richard was incredibly passionate about being a dad and loved spending time with his three boys, Hayes, Harley, and Hank. The four of them could always be found wrestling about and teasing each other. He also loved fishing, camping, hunting, boating, backyard barbecues, wrestling anyone, cheering for the Ravens, and going to football games. He enjoyed the Utah games he was able to attend with his brother in recent years. He enjoyed attending family events when they were held, and was a fierce protector of his sisters, mom, nieces, and nephews. He always wanted to cook up some good food and spend an evening with the people he loved. Bonus if included fishing. Everyone could feel how much he loved and cared about them, as Richard was known to be willing to give his last dollar or the shirt off of his back for those he spent his time with. He will be remembered as a generous as well as considerate. In addition to his soft soul, Richard had a fun and outgoing personality, and he joked, laughed, and played all he could. That's how Mel fell for him. When we say joked and laughed, we truly mean that. His laugh will never be forgotten. It was the greatest and most contagious laugh He was always good for a joke, usually inappropriate and sometimes at the wrong time. But he always had one. If not, he had a sarcastic comment to give. Perhaps one of our favorite memories with Richard is his love for eating crab legs. He loved nothing more than making a huge pile of shells. He inherited this from his dad and lots of time spent at Chinese buffets as a kid. Richard is survived by his wife, Melanie, his children, Hayes, Harley, and Hank, his parents, Gordon Christensen and Terry Carter, his siblings, Blake Christensen, Amberly Lindsay, Amy Dyer, Kimberly Christensen, Christina Christensen, Kenneth Christensen. Sorry if I'm pronouncing this wrong. Is it Camilla Christensen, and many loving nieces, nephews, aunts, uncles, cousins, and friends.
Thank you very much, Kobe. I met Kobe actually at one of those football games with Richard. We spent some time afterwards and had a lot of laughs together. And that was really indicative of the kind of person that Richard was. He made a lot of friends and he had a lot of laughs and we had a lot of good times. And we've got Hank here. After the news of Richard's passing, I was flying into the Salt Lake airport and turned south instead of north and came down and spent some time with Mel and the kids. And these three boys are so adorable and remind me, this one in particular reminds me so much of Richard, all of them. Hi, buddy. And a lot of what I think we'll find today and a lot of what we express today is that so much about Richard lives on in these three beautiful boys. So much of what we loved about him and love about him, and so much of the love that we can share and have wanted to share over the years for Richard, really now our opportunity is with these three kiddos. I have obviously a lot of tears the last week. So I told my 14-year-old Colin, if I break down up here, he needs to come stand with me. And if that doesn't work, then I'll just have all my kids come up here. So forgive us if we just make it a party at the podium. Your love and support here for Richard is so appreciated. And I'm so grateful to have you all here with us. I do think, we mentioned this before, this memorial should be a joyful one and not necessarily a mournful one. After all, we have to keep in mind who we're here to celebrate. Richard had quite the character, quite the energy. And I know that what he would have preferred is he'd prefer for us to laugh. He certainly would have been doing a silly dance, telling a silly joke, sticking his tongue out during pictures. He wouldn't want us to take this too seriously. Richard was taken from us far too soon. There's so much more I was excited to talk about with him, to do with him, to experience with him. I was excited to come to my house for Thanksgiving each year, to see him play with my kids, to play in our backyard together, to talk football with me in the fall, to hear about his fishing trips and the hunts he was excited to do, to hear his excitement about his kids and his love for being a father. It really shone through so much and so often how much he loved his boys. But I know that his memory will be in the hearts of each of us who had the privilege to know him. Over the last couple of years, I got to know Richard better than I ever had before. We spent a lot of time together. We texted each other, joked with each other, did holidays together. And a couple of years ago, I broke down and got season tickets to Utah football games, which I know was a shock to everyone from my BYU days. But Richard was so excited to join me for games. It was kind of adorable, actually. The morning before the first game we went to together, he called me over and over again just to confirm and reconfirm. Where are we going? Where are we going to be? How are we going to meet? And when I finally found him at the stadium, he had a bag with shirts for us. He was so excited. He was generous. He was kind. He made friends with every person in lines around us in the stadium as we got food. He laughed and joked with people. He danced with people around us. He made them feel welcome to be there with us. And he made me feel like I was part of something special there with him. He brought an energy and an excitement to the time we were together that made things fun. I'll always remember how he made me feel as we were together. I'll particularly remember the big hugs he gave me each time we went back home. I remember Richard as a little brother, as a little boy. I think that's one reason I love spending time with his kids. It reminds me of the soft-hearted kid full of energy that I knew growing up. I remember hardly being able to keep up with him at times. He wanted to play and climb trees and jump off garage roofs and break his foot. We used to stack chairs in a swimming pool and have neighbors yell at us in Southern California. One year we were on the wrestling team together. He was incredibly competitive and he was a pretty good wrestler. Our coaches had us go head to head one time, which was not a good idea. We got so intense. This was just practice. So intense. It was so absolutely vicious. The whole room came to a stop. Everybody came and watched. Coaches, players, they just stood in a circle and watched us go at it. It was so rough and terrible and perfect. And I think we both gained a lot of respect for each other that day. He was an active kid who wanted to be outdoors. He loved being outside, hunting, fishing, playing. That love continued with him into adulthood. He had a big smile, even if he wouldn't smile for a camera necessarily. He had a big smile and a contagious laugh. He loved telling jokes. He loved sitting down, getting us to, when he'd visit our house, sit down for a really dumb, but he just loved it so much. We couldn't say no. And so we would sit and we would watch with him. We'd laugh with him. And he had that gift for making friends wherever he went. I see a lot of those friends here today. And was making new friends at a football game certainly was no surprise to me. His soft-heartedness showed through when he'd reach out to see how I was doing over the years. He'd check on me, send me texts, just say, "Hey, bro, how you doing?" He checked on me often while Lisa was going through her cancer treatment. He was there when I needed him. He was a shoulder to cry on. He reached out to me, and I'll be forever grateful for him and what he did for me then. We all know that life wasn't necessarily always easy for Richard. He faced his share of struggles, his heartbreaks, his hitting lows and having to claw his way back. He craved a sense of connection and love. He told me that often when he would reach out. I think that's why he loved his kids so much, that connection with them. There's one thing that Richard was more passionate about than anything else, certainly his kids, Hayes, Harley, and Hank. He was a great dad to these three incredible boys. He brought them out to our house a few times the last year. I was so impressed with him as a dad. He was gentle and kind and fun. He took them and my boys out to do things, out to the zoo, to the aquarium, out on hikes. He's far more active than I was, actually. By the time I would get up in the mornings, he would have been up for hours, taking the kids to do things, going to the store, buying breakfast. He was a great example to me of getting out as a dad and having fun and making memories with the kids. That's an example that I will always strive to follow. Some of my last texts with Richard were about exciting things, silly things. When he was at our house for Thanksgiving this last year, I introduced him to real dairy creamer. He'd only ever had the really cheap stuff made of oil. I had to convince him to try it. He wasn't so sure. And then afterwards, he loved it and he raved about it. He kept talking to me about it. He sent me texts later when he found it at the store. He said, "Look what I found." And in that little brother. Later, not too long ago, he was selected for a work trip across the country. He was so excited for it. He kept sending me messages. What do I say? How do I dress? How do I act? He'd come up with words. What questions would he ask? And ask me, "Is this okay? What do you think of this?" And again, he was my cute little brother. And I was very proud of him. I think as we come here together today, we should remember how Richard lived with a generous heart and a contagious laugh and a love for his fun, a love for fun and for his family. We'll cherish our memories with him and continue to honor his spirit by living as he did, fully, compassionately, and always with a good dose of humor. To Richard, I want to say, find your peace, my brother. Your untimely passing has certainly suspended my reality and broken my heart. It was way too soon and completely unfair. I knew you'd be pleased to see us all together, to remember you and to celebrate you. We've lost a brother and a husband, a father and a son, an uncle, and it's going to take some time to adjust to it. Losing you, my brother, will never be easy, but remembering you is something I look forward to. My memories of my little brother, the good times we had, the laughs we shared. I love you, my brother, and I wish I could tell you that one more time. To his kids, to Hayes and Harley and Hank, these beautiful reflections of my brother. I say your father lives within you, within the good memories you have of him, and the memories the rest of us will share with you as you grow up. And all that love that I have for your dad, for my brother, is now yours. I see my little brother in you. I love you and I'm here for you, now and for all the years to come. There's a famous funeral poem I found once, a number of years ago, that I thought would be a great message to my own kids one day. As I read through it this last week, I thought Richard would like it too. That poem says, "Right now I'm in a different place, and though we seem apart, I'm closer than I ever was. I'm there inside your heart. I'm there with you when you greet each day, and while the sun shines bright, I'm there to share the sunsets too. I'm with you every night. I'm with you when the times are good, to share a laugh or two, and if a tear should start to fall, I'll still be there for you. And when that day arrives that we no longer are apart, I'll smile and hold you close to me, forever in my heart." To everyone here, I say, our love for Richard doesn't end here today. He lives on in his children. He lives on in our memories, in our hearts, in our laughter, in our jokes, in rising early to take kids on adventures, in the games, the outdoors, the mountain air, and every contagious laugh. May we find Richard within us always and honor him in the lives that we lead. We honor him in the love and time we give his children throughout our lives, the hugs, the laughter, the times we come together to feel a connection to those who love their father. It's our opportunity to take that love we have for him and honor him and his legacy by channeling that love to his children, by supporting them and by providing them with the love and connection they will need and the love and connection they deserve throughout their lives. I'd like to end with just some of the last texts that Richard sent me, just as we were planning a trip for him and the boys up to my house a few weeks ago, a trip that we never got to make happen. He said to me, "Just being with you guys, I know we've not always been the closest, but I love you." It's the hard part. He said, "I love you. Just know I've always looked up to you, man. I appreciate you. You're a good Blake. I love you too, Richard. You're a good dude. I'll miss you forever. Thank you for letting me share my thoughts with you. And thank you for being here." I'll hand off now to my dad, Gordon. And following his remarks, we'll hear from Amberly.
I would like to thank everybody for coming here. It shows a lot with Richard and the friendship he made and the lives he touched. He was an absolutely beautiful baby. The day he was born, I think he just smiled instantly. And I remember as he grew, we could just say that anytime to him, "Richard, smile." And that big smile you see on all these pictures, that would come out. That stayed with him his entire life. He still had that exact same smile. We loved that of Richard, of many things we loved of him. He was a fun person to be with. I loved being with him. We joked, we laughed. Many of the things that Blake said about him, we had a lot of fun. And we loved to wrestle all the time. These two boys would wrestle me all the time, and people would ask, "When are you going to stop wrestling with them?" And I said, "I've told them when they beat me, we will stop." And we still were wrestling. So that was a good thing. But even his sisters would jump in. 4 of them would get on me, and they would try to at least roll me over, was kind of the thing they would try to do. But I could still, at that time, I couldn't do it today, I'm sure, but I could pick all 4 of them up, 1 in the front, 1 in the back, and 2 on the shoulders. And we would walk around that way, even places like Disneyland. I could carry all 4 of them at one time. But the wrestling was a big thing in our life. And Richard was a really good wrestler. And if I could tell you something about, and I love that these 2 competed with that. We got Blake to get in there and join him the one year. That was really good. It was a lot of fun to go to their matches. But one thing, when Richard became a really good wrestler, his coach knew us really well. And when they would wrestle and Richard be in a match or a tournament, the coach would let me come up to the mat. And I don't know if, for those that have wrestled, usually when you're wrestling, you just hear, you don't hear who's yelling it, and you don't understand any of it at all, unless it's your coach or somebody. But his coach knew that he would hear my voice, and that's why he let me come up to the mat, because all of that noise that was going on, I could yell something to Richard, and he would look at me and he would hear that. And I remember the one year he was doing extremely well. Being in the Air Force, I was gone a lot. So it was like every other week I'd be at his tournament or his matches. And every one of those that I was at the mat, he would win. And a lot of times he'd take first or second place in a tournament. So he'd do really well. And it wasn't me that was doing that. It was just the encouragement. It was still his talent and his ability. And as you know, when you wrestle, you're on your own. It was him doing it, but it was a little bit of guidance and encouragement and instruction that he just needed at that time. And I equate that to his whole life. Richard, a lot of times, was in that wrestling match, and he had a lot of people around him during those times that he could look to the edge of that mat and see somebody encouraging him, saying some good words or steering him in the right direction. He had that potential inside of him for everything. And he just needed somebody to say, hey, Richard, look over here or do this. And that would help him, and that would straighten him out often and send him on the right path. And I would like to thank all of those people that have been part of his life and done that for him, that have given him that support and encouragement and help. I have lots of stories about Richard and would be here for 38 years if I told them all. So I'll just throw a few of them in. And first of all, I drugged these kids all over the U.S., the younger ones all over Europe and all over everywhere. And I know at the time they didn't really like it, but I'm going to blame that on Gene Kinder. Gene, where are you? Gene Kinder was my recruiter into the Air Force. So he's the one that started all of this. So if you have anything about dragging you around everywhere, it's Gene's fault. Actually recruited me twice, once into the, later into the reserve. So thanks, Gene. Yes, yeah. He actually lived next to us when he got out of recruiting, and he was our next door neighbor in Southern California. So became a wonderful, wonderful friend, still is to this day. And then when he went back into recruiting again, he was out in Guam, and I got to fly, as flying on the cargo airplanes, got to stop and stay at his house quite often in Guam. So that was a lot of fun. So Gene's a good friend. But some of the things about Richard, we would always find something humorous or funny in everything we would do. And somebody mentioned in here, we were talking about Dumb and Dumber, and I wasn't going to tell this story, but because I said, oh, no, none of these kids will understand. They haven't seen Dumb and Dumber, but there's probably enough of you in here now that I guess I can tell this. But Richard came with me to Germany. We went to Germany quite a few years ago, and he stayed there, and I had to go down to Italy for something. And so me and him took the time to go to Venice, Italy. And we're walking around those streets. And if you've been to Venice, it's very narrow and it's really hard to walk your way around because you really can't see anything far away, and you're trying to follow these maps. And for a long time we were walking, there were these two ladies in front of us walking everywhere we went. We're following the whole time. And Suddenly they stopped and turned around and came to us and said, hey, could you guys tell us how we can get to the main square, to the cathedral? And we looked at them and I said, yes, you turn on this street right here and just go down there, turn left, right. And I gave them instructions as to how to get there. And then they took off, went that way. Me and Richard went this way. And just a couple turns, we walked right out at the cathedral. And we looked at each other and both of us said, do you realize what we've done? We should have told them to go this way. So that's my Dumb and Dumber moment with Richard. We've laughed and laughed over the years about that. We were, and we always made fun of things appropriately, of certain things. I think they were. You be the judge, Blake. Anyway, we were driving from El Paso to Dallas, and we were going through Midland, Texas, and we were throwing out this, this Texas accent. Hey, how do you do? And on and on. And we were both hungry. I said, okay, Richard, we'll stop at the Whataburger, but we're going to order with a Texas accent. And so he's trying to hold it, and I get in there and say, I'd like to take a couple of those big old Whataburgers and throw me in a Diet Coke. And Richard he was laughing so hard he couldn't even get to his order, so I had to order it with my Texas accent for him as well. But it was a lot of fun, and we did things like that just all the time. He was a wonderful person. I got to spend the last few days with him, and I'll back up a little bit. We came back from the United Kingdom just about a year ago. And every time we came here to Utah County, a lot of people, we have a lot of family, they would invite us to come and stay at their house. But each one of those times we stayed at Richard's house. And so we got to go do things with Mel and the boys and Richard. We did a lot of fishing. The kids wanted to wrestle. And so I'm proud of him. He's kept that tradition up and going, and they would wrestle with us. So we're very pleased that we took the time to spend all of the time over the last year to stay at Richard's house. That was worth it. And then Richard came out to our house just before he passed. And the kids asked, well, why is he coming out? And I said, he needs his father. And so he came out there, and I see why now. And that turned into a wonderful thing. Even with his passing, we spent some time with him. I've got to tell you, the last funny thing we had with him is his youngest sister, Camilla over here, she's 14. She wanted Richard to take her to school on one of the days. And he said, oh, absolutely, I'll take you to school. What time? She said, well, I need to be there at 7:30. So he needed to get up and be ready to take her at 7:30. Well, he was really tired that day. So he said, I'm going to go take a nap. And he did. And then later that night, we were all sitting in there just kind of having a snack. And it was about 7:15 p.m. And Richard came down the stairs dressed, had his hat on, and said, hey, are you ready? And we're like, ready for what, Richard? He said, oh, I'm taking Camilla to school. It's almost 7:30. And we're saying, Richard, it's 7:30 p.m. He's like, oh, I wondered why it was still so dark. So that's our last laugh we had with Richard, and that's a wonderful memory that we got to have with him. Like all 8 of my children, I love him very much. I'd do anything for any of them, anytime during their life, and they know that. And that offer always stands. Mel, you're part of the family. We appreciate all the time we've been able to be with you and the boys, and we want you to come to our house. We'll come to yours, your family, for the rest of our lives as well. Yeah, I know. And your big brother came and spent last summer with us over there as well. He had a lot of fun. There you go. Yeah. He loves the girls. My girls so far. Yeah. So thank you again, everybody. And I appreciate you being here. And thanks for all the love and support as a family. And that's what I tell people all the time. That's what families do. And thank you for being here, all of you. Okay, thanks.
I don't feel quite as prepared for this, but I'm going to try. I'm Amber, and I am Richard's little sister. And I spent last night writing. I kept telling myself I was going to have this just magnificent thing to say. And I wrote it at like probably midnight, and it isn't magnificent. And it's really probably not what I want to say, but it's all that I could think of saying. And it starts with "this sucks," because this does suck. But I know that Richard would be just thrilled to have this whole place filled like this. He would be thrilled to see this many people here to celebrate him and talk about him. And I hate that we have to be here, but this is a really good turnout, and we're really grateful for that. Richard was my best friend. We spent all of our teen years together. He let me follow him around and be friends with his friends. And he let me tag along to all the things that he did. And I always thought that because my brothers wrestled, I could also wrestle. So, and I would still challenge any of you. I'll challenge you, buddy. Okay. All right, we'll do it. I was born when Richard was 2, so I never had to live a day of my life without him until 10 days ago. I've always had Richard in my corner. He always liked to listen to my problems or whatever I had going on. And I always felt like he could understand me very well. We had the same humor, and I always felt like I could tell him what was going on, and he would just get it. I can still hear him telling me, "I know," in the way he would say that. Tell him a problem, he'd say, "I know." I can still see him doing that. I could always see in his eyes and in the way he looked at me that he cared and he did know. That's the great thing about brothers, especially big brothers. They grow up with you. They've been through a lot of the same things in life that we've been through. And so for the most part, they do understand and they do know. No one understands your childhood problems and issues and the things you've been through, like your siblings. And we often joked about those things. I was very much looking forward to growing old with Richard. I loved that he was always older than me. So somebody had to get old first, and it was nice that it was him. And I'm kind of mad that he's going to be 38 forever now, and I'm going to have to keep getting old. I'm just so sad. There's a huge piece of my childhood and my teen years and my adult life that's just gone. We just woke up one morning and it was just gone. And I'm going to say happy things too, but I'm first going to say all the sad things that I want. And then I will talk about happy memories. Okay. I've spent the majority of my life having to be resilient and determined and juggling all the challenges while being strong and sad and getting through all of it anyways. And that was something that Richard and I could always connect on. It was something we shared, and it tied us together in ways that you just can't explain to anyone. We often talked and joked about it. Knowing that that's gone feels like there is a part of me that is also gone. There are memories that Richard was holding for me. Things I didn't remember, but he remembered, and that they are lost now. I feel that loss very deeply. I knew Richard was struggling. The past couple of years have been devastatingly difficult for him. I've seen him be fine, and I've seen him be sad and down and hard on himself. At times his life seemed to be falling apart, but he kept going, and he did it for his boys because he loved them more than he loved life itself. Richard tried to overcome, and I know he tried. He sent many messages over the past month, and the common theme was that he was hurting, but he was getting through for the boys. He also sent me many messages telling me to remember that he loved me, telling me that I was his best friend, and I had been his favorite person since he was 10. Not mine. I will now cherish those last text messages. The last thing that I said to him was hey, I love you on Valentine's Day, but he never texts me back. Richard and I spent our teenage years doing almost everything together. Every new place we moved to and every new school we were together. We had the same friends. We went to football games and parties and spent many nights watching movies and just hanging out in our living room. He was always looking out for me and always giving me advice, some not so good advice, but he was there and he was trying. When we lived in New Jersey, he had a different lunch period because we were in different grades. And I was so shy and nervous, and I hated going to school because I was alone for those lunch periods. So for the first few weeks, Richard would skip his class. Sorry, Dad. Richard would skip classes, and he'd come to my lunch period so that I didn't have to sit alone. And he helped me make friends. He was always joking and doing the Richard thing, so I couldn't have made those friends I made without him. He was always making sure that I had what I needed. In fact, my husband reminded me a few nights ago that if it weren't for Richard, we wouldn't be together and have our kids. Richard and Cord were friends before Cord and I were together. That is how we met. I think there are two types of people in our lives. There are the observers and there are the cheerleaders. Some have many of each and some have few. Richard was my cheerleader. He was one of my few. Always, as adults, he's been so excited for me and always so happy. He was always pumping me up. He would tell me how awesome and how great I was, and he always wanted to spend time with me. Until this last year when things were really difficult for him. He definitely had large life challenges that impacted his mental and physical health. He was such a light, but he couldn't always see that or feel that. He struggled. He was fighting his demons. It was really hard to witness. We'd seen him fight these demons before and win, and I honestly didn't know he was fighting this battle, and I will forever feel guilty and sad that I didn't know. He also tended not to let me know when things were bad. He told me a few weeks ago that it's because he didn't want me to think that he was a screw-up. Yesterday, my daughter Kennedy, she's 17, she told me that Richard's watching over me and he'd rather watch me have fun and be happy than watch me be sad and miserable. And she's right. She's so smart. And Richard really would want that. If he is here watching us, he wouldn't want to see us sitting here crying like this, but he gets to watch me cry for a little bit longer. Okay, now some good things. I'm just going to share some good memories, some of my favorite fun memories with Rich. My first one is my nursing school pinning ceremony. I was so nervous that nobody would show up. But Richard was there. Then he was early. He was all dressed up, his blue button-up shirt. And I was the speaker at my graduation ceremony. And I could just see him looking up at me from the stage, and I can picture his face right now. Richard always loved to cook. I go from one thing to the next. So anytime we would come visit, he always wanted to cook up something for us. Usually had mushrooms in it, and we wouldn't eat it, but he would. One time, I'm so mad you talked about coffee creamer because I have a coffee creamer story as well. But one time we met him for breakfast, and he brought me an entire bottle of coffee creamer from his house because he knew I couldn't drink the cheap coffee creamer that they had at the restaurant. And I thought that was so sweet that he would bring an entire bottle of coffee creamer into a Denny's or wherever we were. Years ago, before Richard was married and had kids, he moved to southern Utah and he lived with my in-laws and worked while he was getting on his feet. And that was my favorite time period because we spent so much time together. I had 3 little kids and I was a stay-at-home mom before I started classes up again for nursing school. Richard had started a construction job and started making some good money. He was always generous and wanted to take me out to eat often. He also couldn't help himself and bought my kids hats and shoes and always wanted to spoil them. One day he called me from work and asked me if I wanted a fire hydrant for yard decor. He told me he was doing a job and that they ripped out an old fire hydrant and they were going to dispose of it unless I wanted it. I, of course, told him, yes, I wanted it. And he very excitedly brought me a huge and super. Cord was not as excited as Richard. That fire hydrant is still laying in my backyard. We can't get rid of it. And now we will never be able to get rid of it. So thank you, Richard. During that same time period, he also volunteered to paint my entire basement for me. Not only did he do that, but he was happy to do it. Nothing explains Richard better. He wasn't afraid of the work. He just wanted to hang out. He'd come and do anything just to hang out. I would often come up to visit for various reasons. And when I would, he was right here, no matter what. He would drive across the county. He would come swim at our hotels. He would drive from Spanish Fork to Lehigh just to eat dinner with me. A couple of years ago, I was so exhausted, but we still wanted to hang out. So we loaded all the kids up in my car, and he drove my car since I like to be the passenger. And we rode up the canyon and did an entire loop. I'm so glad that we spent that time together. Then it felt very insignificant, but now I'm really happy we did it. A couple of years ago, I had to stay in Salt Lake City for a work conference, and I was really nervous to stay in the city by myself. So he told me he had some friends he worked with that were really big and tough if I needed any help with anything. And he met me for lunch. In fact, he made his entire work crew stop with him, and they all met me for lunch. He would do anything just to spend some time. He really knew what was important in life, and he knew that quality time and making those that you care about feel loved was important. I love my memories of him sending me a care package before my youngest baby was born. It was before he had kids, and I remember feeling so loved and special because he sent me a bunch of cute baby girl outfits and also treats and fuzzy pink socks for myself, which I thought was so adorable. He really was the most thoughtful guy. A few years ago, we celebrated Melanie's birthday by going to an escape room. It was my first time going to one, and he was so funny, making me laugh the whole time. I really felt like he and I would be really good at an escape room. But we actually weren't, because we just joked around the whole time, didn't take anything serious. At one point, we were all locked in a room and there were body parts hanging from the ceiling. And I remember looking over at him and grabbing the arm and that was dangling between us and asking him if he needed a hand. I can still hear his laugh. I, of course, thought I was so funny. But the best part was that Richard also thought that I was funny. He and I always shared the same sense of humor. Not many people think that I'm as funny as I find myself, but he always did. You do? Thank you. I thought he was hilarious too, and I'm really sad that that's gone. Richard was more than my brother. He was my best friend and my buddy, and the person who would never judge, but also laugh at me and call me out on my BS. He would make fun of me and tease me, and I could punch him and tell him that he was an idiot. Not many people I can do that with these days. Now we all get to make sure that Richard's memory lives on through these awesome boys that he has. He loved them more than anything else, and the only thing he would ask of anybody left here is to make sure he would only want us to remind them of the little he would want us to remind them, take them fishing, check in on them, remind them who their daddy was. If I can ask anything of anybody here in this room, it would be the same thing, to just show those boys the love that they deserve. I'm just going to end with a couple of short little poems. I don't know who wrote them. I just found them on Pinterest. There is no word to describe the loss of a sibling. If you lose a spouse, you are a widow or a widower. If you lose your parents, you're an orphan. If you lose a sibling, you just become a girl who lost her brother. The next one is, a group of siblings were sitting in the grass. Do you think we're together in every universe? One quietly asked the others. After thinking for a bit, one sibling said, if we come back as flowers, we will all be part of the storm. And if we come back as fruit, we will grow on the same vine. It could never be possible that we aren't together. We are forever and for always. And the last one is, don't fall out of love with the world because they no longer live in it. Instead, be grateful that this world produced them Be glad that this life ever existed and that you were blessed enough to love them then and love them still. Don't fall out of love with this world because it could not keep your heart whole. Instead, let love be the glue, patch it up, and fill it with joy. Joy that you know firsthand in this bittersweet conundrum that great grief is only born of great love. I love you so much, Richard, and I will carry you with me.
All right. I cried more than Amberly did. That's a surprise. We're now going to have a quick tribute video, if it is working. Do we know? Casey. Coming in the back. Wonderful.
Sorry, Chris. It's okay if you do.
Going, Harley, keep going. Yeah, I think you got a good one too, man. Trying to get away. You got just a baby one. Say cheese.
Sorry, it's not playing the right. I'm sorry, it's not playing in the right spot. Okay, so it's okay if we replay. I'm sorry, it's not the right spot. I'll just try it there. Yeah, just restart. Just, yeah, just restart.
Keep going, Harley, keep going. Yeah, I think you got a big one too, man. Cheese. Cheese. Two heads. You're doing like a monster.
I'm so sorry, guys.
And the winner is Emily.
Oh, yeah. Feel good? Yeah? Feel like a pretty good size? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. There you go. Oh, yeah. Yes, sir. Yeah. No, no, go ahead. Go ahead. Just go ahead. I'm gonna get you food for your birthday. Just the cake is open. Okay? Yeah. Definitely. I'm serious. Like this lunch, like for dinner. He's so sweet. Don't tell me what to do. It's just so about Sunday. I'm loving on a porch swing. You girl up next to me.
All right, thank you. And now I believe a song. That's what I love about Sunday. Frank's going to turn it on for us in the back. Y'all didn't know you're going to sing it with us? There are lyrics on the back if you would like to join in singing it.
She talks about Granny and they're singing key in the church. She always Miss Betty. Memories all around.
I got a thumbs up in the back, so we're just waiting. While we watched the video, I got to sit with Hank, who was very excited to feed me half soggy goldfish and chips. So, and Soren, yeah, that's lunch. Some kind of colds I come home with. Yeah, he said he's going to work on the sound for us. All right. Thank you very much. I have the microphone. There we go. Maybe. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We're at the point now where we'd love to invite those of you who would like to share a memory, share your love. I know there are a lot of folks who had times with Richard here in the audience, certainly no pressure, but we'd love to hear from you. A minute, maybe two. And we'll just let this go until everyone has an opportunity to speak or not. And we'll go from there.
All right, I'm gonna, instead of doing memories, I actually wrote a letter to Richard. I'll try to get through it. Richard, because I was that annoying little sister that would always tell on you and follow you around, we didn't always get along when we were kids. But as we grew older, we became the best of friends. We developed a bond that I've literally always cherished. Only me and you will ever truly know what we went through together. When we didn't have anyone else, we always stuck together and made the best out of things. From being little kids to being adults in your tiny studio apartments, we would laugh, we would talk, we would in all your favorite TV series. We cooked dinner together, spent holidays together, and we would enjoy each other's company. We had the same friends, so we did everything together. We each found our soulmate and started our own families. I will forever be grateful that I didn't have to walk through all of those hard years without you. You were the reason I wasn't alone. I'm going to miss all of the text messages and videos you would always send me. Your sense of humor, you poking fun at me, our goofy Venmo receipt notes, and just everything we would laugh at together. I always wanted the best for you to be happy. Even when you didn't want to hear my motivational speeches, I didn't care. I said them anyways. You had a lot of heartache and pain throughout your years, but Melanie and your boys were your true happiness. So I promise to be there for them since you no longer can. I promise they will never have to walk through life alone. I'm not going to say God shouldn't have taken you, because I truly believe it was time for your pain and suffering to end. You finally have that peace and calmness you deserve. And that right there is what I've always wanted for you, Richard. So until we see each other again, I'll miss you and think about you every single day with so much love, your little sister.
I am not sure I will get this at all. I wrote about 8 pages and I would write it and rewrite it and rewrite it. And I came to the conclusion I just needed to tell you what was in my heart instead of what was on my paper. I loved Richard so much. He was such a good little baby, and he got his sense of humor from his father. And sometimes it wasn't very nice either. But that's where he got it from. From the time he was a little boy, he would chase after his dad, telling sometimes naughty jokes. Yeah, they were. He had personality from the time he was little. We had no problem with him. This one cried a lot. Richard laughed a lot. But you know, I loved him, and I tried so hard to help him make sure he knew that he was loved by me, family. I hope he knew that. I hope that he knows how much love he has. He used to call me and say, "Mom, I need to talk. Can I come and get you?" And he would come and go get a Pepsi and just ride and talk. He thought he could convert me to country music. That did not happen. I listened to the oldies, which, by the way, was what I grew up listening to. So I don't think they were the oldies. But he didn't like them. Thought he could convert me. He got me a couple, but not very much. But I loved him so much. I loved him knowing I was upset, coming to me. Those big hugs he just would wrap around me. And before he went to his dad's, about 3 days before, he kept calling me and telling me, "I love you, Mom." And he didn't do that unless I said it first. But he just kept doing that. Even the drive, he would call me and tell me he loved me. So I will always cherish that of him telling me he loved me every day. That's something that I will never forget. I will never forget him, my dear boy. And I will never forget him loving me. And I appreciate everybody for coming.
I feel like I've said enough to everybody that I've seen last night and today, and I just want Amy, Amber, Blake, and Richard. These are some pretty remarkable kids. You might think you're old, but you're still kids. I've seen them be there for each other over and over and over through their lives. I've seen them fight together, fight for each other. Yeah. And there's a love there and a connection between these four kids that a lot of siblings don't understand. When I had my sister's boy die, Mitch, Richard and Melanie, I've been told, were some of the first ones that showed up at his home with his wife and her kids, washing dishes, sorting through sippy cups, and just trying to give some sense of comfort and order to Christina. That's the kind of people. Richard didn't always have a lot, financially or whatever, but he gave everything to anybody in his way, whether he knew you or not. He was there and he would do anything for anybody. And I need to be more like Richard. But I just want you guys to know how much I love you, how much you have a special place in my heart. And I know that we'll see Richard again. And you can be together fighting for each other again on the other side. Maybe not as much with, but for each other, always. I love you.
As you guys know, Richard never had a dull moment. He either had something to say or something always was brought up. Christmas is never going to be the same. That's one thing for me, is secret or an elephant, white elephant. He would always steal the best present, instantly make sure he could keep it no matter what. And there was one time we were going through a hard time and he looked at me and goes, "I'd be glad to be your alibi, but I'd rather go fishing." I looked at him and went, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Let's just go fishing. I don't want to be an alibi." It was just like a hard, sad moment into just I can't believe you just said that. But that's, after hearing some of the stories, Gordon, it makes so much more sense why it was always like that. He's going to be missed. And I see in the kids that they are going to be just like him. And I'm sorry, Mel, but you're going to have a hard time. He's always going to be remembered.
So I don't know who had more perfect timing than anybody than Richard, but we never called him Richard because we had too many Richards in the group. So he was Dickie. And it seemed like every time I was down or out, couldn't talk for years, all of a sudden, there's a call from him. "Hey, you ready to go sledding with the kids? Get your girls ready. We're coming over with the four-wheeler and the sled." I'm like, "Bro, we barely got any snow out here." "Oh, that's all right." I'm like, "All right, well, I'll probably see you in about an hour, I guess." "Oh, no, we're just down the street. I'll be there in a second. Get your..." All right, I guess so. Invite me over for the 4th of July. Didn't have a clue I was going through a hard time. It was just instantly, "Hey, what are you doing? You need to come watch fireworks. We got front row seats right here in my place. You got to come. You got to come." I'm like, "I really can't afford to go out or do nothing right now, but I'm sorry." "What do you need to afford? We got all the food for you. We got all the drinks, everything taken care of. I'm like, all right, I'll come over. Appreciate it. Eat a plate of food, and there he is with another one ready to serve you. Like, no, you didn't try these ribs yet. Oh, no, you need more. I'm like, bro, I'm full. I don't care. We need to put some weight on you, skinny. Like I said, he always had perfect timing somehow. And I'll always appreciate his friendship and his laughter and really brotherhood, because every time I'd leave his house, he'd give me a hug, like lift me off the freaking ground. And you're my brother, Skinny. You're my brother. And that's really hard, but thank you.
Hey, buddy. I'm Travis. I moved to Payson when I was 9. Can't remember how many years after that, but I met Richard. Always went skateboarding with him. Remember coming over to your house quite often, seeing Blake there. And I remember he used to always love to catch flies, and he was good at it too. Catch the flies and then knock them out. It was amazing times. A few years ago, we went up to, got the boys up early, went up to Strawberry, and we caught a bunch of crawdads. I was expecting to catch fish, but no, these crawdads just kept coming up, and he's like, let's catch those too. So we go ahead and catch them all up. He went home, cooked them up, brought them over to me. It was pretty cool. I always love Richard, and boys are always welcome. I love to see him jump off the couches, just be rambunctious. He's like, my little boy Ryu needs that, so it's like, bring him over anytime. I love Richard, and I love you all.
I'm so grateful. Sorry. To see Blake and Richard have time together this last little bit. One of my first memories of Richard was helping Blake put a belt on. This is so funny. Richard was 16 and when I had a chance to meet him, and I feel like Blake and I were a lot more nerdy than he was. And I just remember him helping him put on a belt because he wanted to make sure Blake was doing it the right way. I'm pretty sure he caught us kissing one time too, and he was like, I'm not gonna tell on you guys. One thing I really loved about Richard, I think he and I had very similar personalities. We loved to get out and do stuff. Neither of us could sit still very well. And it was a really good balance when he would come spend time with us, with him and his boys. He and I would jump in the car and he would just go forever. We both had a lot of energy, and it would give Blake the rest he needed. So I wasn't always bugging him to come out and do stuff. I'm really grateful for his laugh, for his generosity, and I'm just grateful that I could learn so much from him, you know, in the time that we had together, just to love and to laugh and to be silly and to get up early and to get in the car and go find something to do. He was really, really good at that. And so I hope we can all be inspired to remember that that's what life's about, is to get in the car and go find something to do with the people we love. I'm really grateful for that.
Richie was my best friend. My wife and I moved up here about 3.5 years ago, and I met him at work, and I didn't know anybody, you know, and he found out what I used to do at my previous job. And the first week he he asked me, he was like, hey, do you want to go out hunting? I said, sure. So we went out rabbit hunting and we hit it off. And we're best friends like ever since. And he and I spent a lot of time outdoors together, fishing and hunting and stuff like that. So I have a bunch of memories with that, but I'll share my most recent fishing trip with him. We went out to Starvation Reservoir, and it was one of those days. It was just incredible. We caught like 35 fish in 2 hours. We both had 2 poles in the water, and it just seemed like they were constantly going off. By the time you got bait on one of your poles and threw it in, your other pole was going off. It was an awesome day. But what's funny about the story is I'm reeling in a fish and I look over and Richie has both of his rods in his hand and he's like trying to reel one in while he's reeling the other. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Put one down. And for those of you that don't fish very much, it's kind of hard to reel in 2 rods at the same time. But yeah, I'll forever cherish his laugh, that, you know, just the good memories we had outdoors together. So.
All right. Someone took my program. All right. Hayes said he would hold this time. Thank you all very much. Thank you again for being here. Thank you for your thoughts, your words, your love. We're going to conclude here in just a moment. I was asked to announce our pallbearers for today will be Gordon Christensen, Blake Christensen, Cord Lindsay, Aaron Dyer, Caden Lindsay, and Colby Cookson. After our closing prayer by Amy, my cousin, then Frank will lead us through the rest of the procedures here. So just in closing remarks, again, thank you all. Thank you for your love. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your smiles. Thank you for a lifetime of being there for us. We appreciate you very much, and we appreciate you being here today. This has been beautiful, and I appreciate the memories of my brother, and I appreciate the time with you all. Amy.
Before I give a prayer, I just wanted to also share that about 3.5 years ago or so, me and my family moved back here to Payson, closer to my mom after my dad passed away. And we bought a house and we were redoing some things when we first got here. And here came Melanie and the boys and Richard, and he was so willing to help us, no charge. I offered and I offered and I offered. It's hard to accept favors, and no charge. He put on expansion for our porch, and there Melanie was helping him. There Richard was involving the boys, handing them the hammer, hit this board, and he just encouraged their energy and focused it to help me and my family. That wasn't the first time that he helped my family. Years ago, Richard was able to come stay with me in Cedar City when we were building a home, and he helped frame that whole house. Again, nothing, no charge. We've been recipients of his kindness and his talent, his skills, and it's kind of funny because tomorrow we're leaving, we're moving to Wyoming, we're leaving here, and this week we're thinking and honoring Richard, like when we came and when we're leaving, and it's just crazy on the timing. But I just remember when Melanie was pregnant with her little baby Hank, and I remember him wanting to go with an H name, and he said, we have to convince Melanie, she doesn't like the word Hank. And I'm like, I'll work on her. I love Hank, the name. And you gotta keep helping me convince her to name him Hank. But he was always so good to play with my kids when they were little. Just so good with children and people. And Melanie, I just think the whole wide world of you, and you'll have a good life with these boys. And Richard had a lot of cousins. I'm one of them. He had a lot of aunts and uncles. And his dad, as you know, also lost a dad.
And I just can't help but mention all my aunts and uncles, and they must know how these children feel. And I know any day you need that any one of those aunts and uncles would receive a phone call because they get it. So I'm just thankful for you and your boys and Richard and the service that we've received and his love. I'll just go ahead and close with a prayer. Our Father in heaven, we're very thankful for this day that we could come together as family to honor Richard. I'd also like to thank you for the Christensen family and for Gordon and Terry and for Blake and Richard and Amber and Amy and their beautiful children and Melanie, that they can feel your comfort and your love and that they will get signs that Richard is close to them and not far, and that they will feel your peace and be able to honor his memory along with us, that we can support one another as a family. And we ask for a blessing of safety, travel to the cemetery, that we can lay Richard to rest. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Now, for the procession to the cemetery, there's no official procession. Feel free to follow over there, but really just meet there. Please don't break any traffic laws. Don't run any stoplights or anything on the way. And there's also a luncheon at a church that was on the one that I wrote down, but someone took it. Anyone have the address?
40 South West, 800 South.
It's a church on 800 South.
Yeah, if you go up to the top of the hill, it's the only stoplight up there. If you turn right, it's about 3 blocks down on the right-hand side. And if you need to Google Casey Christensen, his house is right next to there. Does he have any food? Casey does have food. He put it in the church.
650 West, 800 South.
How's that sound?
650 West. All right.
Thank you. We're prepared now to move to the cemetery. When we have our pallbearers to step out on this porch, we'll bring the caskets to you there. I invite everyone else to please stand.
Right, get ready. We do it. Okay, is that okay?
Can you grab that little?
You follow us out right now. We'll come back and get your.
Like a bomb.
Follow us out right now. You can come back.
Harley, come follow your mama.
Ready?
I don't have it. You guys still have it? Thank you. Said I don't have to.
Are you going with? Do you need us to take any flowers or anything?
So, I was told that this one is going. I'll go ask if there's lots of flowers.
I think they're cousins, I think, right? So.
Maybe.